My name is Amanda Nairn, and this is my presentation over relative risk, odds ratio, and rate ratio. Prevalence and incidence. The prevalence is the total number of both new and existing cases. The incidence is the number of new cases out of the risk population over a certain period of time. Risk, the number of cases out of the population of risk. Odds, odds the probability of an event over the probability that the event will not occur. And the rate is the number of cases out of the population at risk per unit person time. Relative risk is also called risk ratio, but the relative risk gives an estimate of the risk of developing a disease of interest. It's used to describe outcomes associated with predictors or exposures that are evaluated in both cohort studies and randomized controlled trials. The odds ratio is a measure used to describe associations emerging from case-controlled studies. It's different from the relative risk in that the odds ratio provides an estimate of the odds that a person had been exposed given that they were diseased. The rate ratio is also called the incidence ratio, and it's used to compare incidence rates of exposed and unexposed groups. To calculate the risk, odds, and rate, we're going to use the general notation 2x2 table, which shows the numbers of those with and without stomach cancer for heavy and non-heavy drinking in both the cities of Atlantis and Camelot. The letter notations of A, B, C, and D will assist us in correctly setting up the formulas to calculate the risk, odds, and rates. This 2x2 table is a very useful tool for, again, calculating these formulas. It can be a little bit confusing with the terms to make sure you're plugging in the right numbers to calculate the correct risk, odds, or rate that you are looking for. So here's the table. You have both Atlantis and Camelot. As I mentioned, each box is notated with A, B, C, or D, and this will aid us in setting up the formulas for each of these calculations correctly. So calculations for risk. To calculate risk for heavy drinkers, we are going to use the formula A over A plus B. So here we have the risk of cancer for heavy drinkers in Atlantis. That was 18 over 18 plus 482. So the total number of people in this study were 500. It comes out to 0.036. And then again, you can see the risk of cancer for heavy drinkers in Camelot, once again using that same formula. You're taking A, 250 over A plus B, which was, B was also 250. That gives us 250 over 500, which it seems that I forgot to put that number in there, but it is 0.500. And then again, we're going to use that same formula, but slightly different. It's the same method, but we're using different numbers this time. We're going to use the numbers from C and D, so we can go back, take a look. So as you can see, in Atlantis, the number for those with stomach cancer that did not heavily drink were 2, and the number that did not have stomach cancer and were not heavily drinking was 498. Same with Camelot, you had 120 people that were positive for stomach cancer with non-heavy drinking, and that 380 were negative for stomach cancer with non-heavy drinking. So again, plugging in those numbers, we come out to risk of cancer for non-heavy drinkers in Camelot was 0.240, and the number of non-heavy drinkers in Atlantis was 0.004. To calculate for odds, we're using the formula A over B. It's very, very straightforward. So again, going back, you can see we have our numbers here. This helps us plug in the formula correctly. A over B in Atlantis gives us 0.037. Camelot, it's 1. The odds using the formula C over D, once again, just plugging in the different numbers. 120 over 380 for Camelot, and 2 over 498 for Atlantis, which will give us in Atlantis 0.004 and Camelot 0.316. Now we have rate. Rate, we're going to use the formula A over the number of person years. So this was calculated in the week 1 assignment for us. So in Atlantis we have the number of people positive for cancer with heavy drinking was 18, and we're dividing that by the number of person years, which was 985. So we have 0.018 per 985 person years. You can see for Camelot as well, it is 0.320 for per 781.25 person years. Again, then we calculate that rate for the non-heavy drinkers. In Atlantis, it is 0.002 per 1,000 person years. In Camelot, it is 0.121 per 990 person years. Now, to calculate the relative risk, this is the formula we will use. It's A over A plus B. That is over C plus D. So you can calculate those separately, then you get your numerator and your denominator. Those will equal our relative risk. The relative risk for getting cancer in heavy drinkers compared to non-heavy drinkers. In Atlantis, it is a relative risk of 9. In Camelot is a relative risk of 2.083. Calculating the odds ratio, again, very straightforward. You have A times D divided by B times C. The odds ratio for getting cancer in heavy drinkers compared to non-heavy drinkers. In Atlantis, it is 9.299, and the odds ratio in Camelot is 3.167. In calculating the rate ratio, the rate of cancer, heavy drinkers over the rate of non-heavy drinkers equals IR, which is our rate ratio. To correctly calculate the IR, you must first calculate the rates of cancer for both heavy and non-heavy drinkers. And we did that a little bit earlier in this presentation when calculating the rate. So once you have those numbers, we are able to correctly calculate the rate ratio. In Atlantis, it is 9.137. In Camelot, 2.64. Now, when can we use the odds ratio to approximate the relative risk? Well, the disease must be rare. It has to be less than 5 to 10% of the underlying population with the disease. The controls must accurately represent the individuals of the overall population, and our cases must accurately represent the individuals in that population that have the disease of interest. And here are the references. Thank you.